You're listening to episode 123, Creating a New Story for Your Life Through Self-Discovery with Kelley Rheault. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome, and Happy New Year to you. This is the first episode of 2018, and I thank you for joining me for it. And I have a great episode for you today to start off the new year. I'm actually going to be joined by someone who I'm currently in a coaching certification program with. Her name is Kelley Rheault, and we're going to talk a lot today about creating a new story for our lives in spite of the circumstances we may have been dealt. In particular, Kelley's going to talk about how growing up without a normal family structure shaped her, and specifically how not having her biological father around affected how she looked at the world and her relationship to men. She's going to talk about how her home situation affected her experience at school and with her friends. We talk a lot about self-worth and how Kelley's been able to fully accept herself for who she is. And she'll share the self-discovery work she did that helped her to realize she wasn't a victim of circumstance. And she'll talk about how we can use our circumstances to create something better, and also the importance of living in the present moment. So just lots of good content in here, and I think you'll find Kelley's story to be inspiring and hopeful. And before we get into this episode, I have something I wanted to offer to you with this being the start of the new year. So as I mentioned, I'm currently in a coaching certification program for becoming a life coach, and I've been learning a lot about setting goals and how to actually achieve them, and also just getting really clear on my vision for my life and what I want to accomplish. And so I want to help you get really clear on what you want and how you can go about making it happen. So for the month of January, I'm offering free 60-minute vision strategy sessions where I can help you get clear on your vision and what you want to achieve this year. I want to see you have a great 2018 because you deserve that. So if you'd like some help with making that happen, then feel free to reach out to me and we'll set up a call. You can either email me at melissa@thegrassgetsgreener.com or use the contact form on the website. Either way, I look forward to hearing from you and being able to help you in this way. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this first episode of 2018, and I'll go bring Kelley on. Kelley, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here today to share your story with us.
Well, thank you, Melissa. I'm really excited for the invite. And yes, I'm just very excited to be here too.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you on here. So you and I know each other from a coaching certification program that we're both in right now. And when you heard me talking about the podcast, you expressed interest in being a guest. And then we had the chance to connect and chat about your story a little bit. And I definitely thought it would be a good one to share here. So I'm looking forward to having you share it with the audience because I know you want to share a message of hope and inspiration with them. And you and I were talking about how, we don't have to let the past hold us back and how important it is to work through it so that we can create a great life for ourselves. So I definitely want to make sure that, we talk more about that here. But first, what I'd like to do, Kelley, is have you give us a summary of what you experienced growing up so that we know where you're coming from. And then we'll go from there. How does that sound?
It sounds great. And yes, Melissa, I mean, when I heard what you were doing and, having this podcast for, congratulations into your fourth year, I just think that you are just, absolutely sending a message that I know I wish, I could have found something like this back years and years ago. And so I just want to commend you for what you're doing and the message that you're spreading and just how much hope that you're passing on. So I appreciate being part of that.
Oh, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I guess,
just
my story.
Yeah. kind of share about, the circumstances that you grew up in.
Yeah, and so when I was born, right, the youngest of four, my two older brothers and my older sister were already in a foster home in Phoenix, Arizona. But here's my mom, bless her heart, right, just had another baby, even though she had a lot of, just mental illness. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar, but she just couldn't take care of her children. So here are my brothers and sisters, which my sister was about 3 years older than me at this point. Here I was born, and she was just giving it another try, I guess, from her heart, doing the best she could. But of course, she couldn't take care of us. So at around 6 weeks old, the state asked this foster family that had my brothers and sisters, trying to keep us all together, if they would be willing to take me in. And I found out many years later, being reconnected with them, that it was a very tough decision, but they, did not want to split up our family. And I will be forever grateful for that, because to this day, I'm still part of my brothers and sisters' life, and it could have turned out a lot different. But yeah, so here I was with this foster family for about 2 years, and just a chain of events that, again, nobody could write the story, right? They say sometimes the reality is stranger than fiction. And somehow my mom was able to take all of us and ended up driving us down to Florida. So, almost a week trip, nobody knew where we were, and we ended up with some of our biological family. But the whole thing was very traumatic of, leaving a foster home that I knew, a family that I knew. I mean, this was the only mother and father that I knew. I never met my biological father. And as much as I tried not to use that as an excuse in my life, I guess all the work that I've done up to this point, I realized that it was an issue. That even though the story that I tried to tell myself was that it wasn't a hardship, it was probably a good thing. My dad had a lot of, alcoholism and just very abusive. My mom almost had a miscarriage with me at 8 months pregnant, because he, abused her. And so, that kind of situation I thought was great. It was actually more of a blessing that my dad wasn't in my life. But anybody, listening today, you realize, that mother, father, that family structure, really helped shape us for the rest of our lives. And whatever example that we were given, unfortunately, good or bad, really shapes who we are. And so not having that father figure, I guess that's really where a lot of my story and my abandonment issues and a lot of just the way that I looked at the world and looked at myself in relationship to men. And so the men I attracted, I think affected me, right?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult whenever, we grow up in a situation where we don't have kind of that, typical family, right, of having your mom and your dad there to support you and to help you, grow into this person that, you're supposed to be and all this stuff. And like, it just, it really does impact you. And maybe you don't even realize it right away, but then, later on down the line, it kind of comes up and you see how it did have an impact on your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, as much as I know, foster parents can care for you and other family members, but, I have my own son. I mean, he's 11 and there's nothing like that parental love, that unconditional love that you get. And I guess that's when I first started seeing it, growing up and not having that. And then, again, having a biological mother with mental illness, my mom's sister, my aunt, ended up taking us all in at one point. But, she had a lot of, financial difficulties growing up in a very abusive family herself, doing the best that she could of keeping my brothers and sisters together. But it was very difficult. And I just know, like you said, yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to ask. So were you were you aware of kind of the environment that you were being raised in at the time? Like, I mean, I know you were really young. So like, At what age do you feel like you kind of became aware of like, okay, this is not like, a normal family environment that other kids are raised in?
Right. I think, around that middle school age, and my sister, unfortunately, for financial reasons, my aunt couldn't take her, and she didn't come to live with us until she was about 8, and I was 5 or 6. So I think, well, actually, gosh, when I think about that, that was more like kindergarten, first grade, of
Yeah.
realizing, wow, you know, hearing the stories of what my sister had to deal with, and realizing that, yeah, most families have a mom and a dad. The family isn't pushed around from one home to another. And yeah, I think really at that elementary school age, I started really thinking, wow, I have a chance of losing all these people. Like, just that fear. I
Mm.
remember having a fear of a constant nightmare, and it would wake me up, and I can vividly remember it. Even, I mean, I'm almost 50 years old, like remembering this nightmare of my whole family being taken from me, like somebody broke into our house, and I would constantly, I mean, all my childhood, I remember that. It just every moment feeling like, oh my gosh, this is all going to be gone at any moment. These
Mm.
people are going to be gone, because that's all I experienced. And that fear, didn't realize what that was creating in me, and how that changed just my way of being, of just constantly feeling not good enough, constantly feeling unworthy, that if I'm not perfect, and I know that that translated into my school, and feeling like I just had to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, somebody's going to leave. If you're not perfect and you're not doing everything right. So I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was always putting on this persona, because I didn't want people to leave me again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That at a younger age than I even thought about, maybe before now,
Oh, interesting.
feeling like
Yeah.
that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Do you recall if you
yeah.
had like any like shame around the situation while you were in school? Like, where you're like, oh, I don't want the other kids to find out like this is my situation.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I remember never wanting to have sleepovers, never wanting to tell them, because it seemed like everybody else around me had mom and dad. And I remember a neighbor down the street that I would spend the night at her house. I still felt very awkward around her father, but I also remember feeling, and I hate to say it, but very jealous. Like, I would see her sitting on her dad's lap and being the little princess. And I thought, wow, that would be so great to have that. Like, I, oh my goodness, like, I will never have that in my life, having that core, relationship of the, kind of that opposite sex relationship of my father, and where you feel just so special, and where you don't have to do anything to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
I
I
think
think
I kind of spent
that's
my,
totally
yeah,
normal
that's the
to
point. Yeah.
totally normal to feel that way.
Yeah. And just, that's so funny, is saying it that way. And I know that that went into my adult relationships of, I have to do something. I have to be different to be loved. I can't just be loved for me, who I am, because that hasn't worked. I guess my little mind kind of said, well, that hasn't worked in the past. I mean, if the first man in my life didn't even stay around, if I wasn't good enough, for him to stay around, how is any other man in my life going to stay around? I'm just not good enough.
Mm.
And those were the core beliefs that I had to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, the relationships, I mean, I was married when I was 21. I actually went in the Air Force right after high school. I was 17. I had my 18th birthday there. And I realize now, looking back, that was, and I'm grateful. I mean, I'm happy to have served, but I realize at such a young age, and being a woman, and, just throwing myself into this very difficult environment, it was because I was running away from the life that I had. I was running away from, being just in this box. I wanted to just find my own identity completely away from my family.
Mm-hmm. Is that what it felt like back then, that you were running away, or did you feel like you were doing it for some other reason?
Yeah, I guess I didn't feel like it was running away. It took me a few years later I thought I was doing it because it was, my aunt, very poor environment, that if I didn't find a way to get a scholarship, I wasn't going to go to college. I really, I think all my past, really created this overachiever, right? To be perfect, and when my grades weren't the best to get me a scholarship, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to do something else. And so the Air Force kind of happened by accident, and it gave me a place that I could still do everything that everybody expected of me, to be that college grad, to be the one to make it out, to be, it was a lot of pressure. I look back now and it's like, wow, it was a lot of pressure. And I think, but I didn't see it as running away, but very kind of after the Air Force, when I would discuss it with peers, and as I was going through a lot of the hate to say self-help, right? But personal development and reading a lot and just trying to self-discovery. I kind of think that's a healthier way to say it, right? Self-discovery is, that's when it kind of became clear to me that as the baby of the family, as the one that everybody thought I was lucky because I wasn't as old as everyone else when we were shuffled around from family to family, it still made such an impact. And I just wanted to get away from it all and find out who I really was.
Yeah. And I can relate to that, need to feel perfect or to overachieve,
right.
Yeah. And it's, it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it can be a good thing if it helps us right. To be successful, but it's not necessarily a good thing if, we continue to push ourselves in a harmful way, right? If
right. To where we're not accepting ourselves.
Right,
to where
exactly.
The minute that we fail, we're
hard on ourselves about
like
it. And
we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. So we have to.
It gets from a healthy to an unhealthy point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's so important to be able to recognize that and address it.
Yeah. And I think that we all have to recognize, and I guess the message that I hope to transfer, now who I am, of total and unconditional, complete self-acceptance, that we realize we are amazing. We were born incredible lights. We have gifts to bring to the world that nobody else on this planet that has lived before us or after us, they don't have the same gifts that we were meant to bring here. But when we have this additional baggage of, not being ourselves and trying to be something else, our true natural gifts, never develop.
Yeah, they never make it into the world.
They never make it into the world because we're so worried and live from that fear rather than living from the faith of going, I am magnificent. I am incredible. Instead of the, I'm not worthy of this, and never feeling like we're good enough. I think that's what it was. Like even now, and Melissa, I think of my story. So fast forward, I was able to start my own business 20 years ago within this wonderful company that, I'm an independent agent, and there's only 300 in the whole company of probably over 100,000 independent agents. There's only 300 of us that are in what we call the Millionaires Club. And it just means that we've earned over $1 million with this company. And I think about that. And instead of being proud about it, and instead of being in a room, I was recently in a training room where there were a big event with about 200 people in the room. And there were only 2 of us that were Millionaire Club members. And yet I still didn't feel good enough. I'm being recognized. People are clapping. And I think, wow, I did it. I worked hard and I made this position, but I'm still struggling. It's like the little girl in me still doesn't feel worthy enough, still says, I'm not good enough. And it's now I have the realization of it. And so I can step almost out of my thoughts and be the observer and go, what's wrong? Like, why aren't you feeling worthy of this accolade, of this applause, and of this recognition? Why don't you feel worthy of it?
Right, because I mean, and you should be, and congratulations on that. And but that's what happens, right? That's what happens. Like that,
right?
That old programming is just there, and it's like no matter what we achieve, unless we work through that, unless we get to a place where we do feel good about ourselves, then it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter what we achieve. We're not going to feel worthy.
Right. It's wild. It's a wild phenomenon. But
right.
But I guess, but the message that I want to give is that I've had, oh my goodness, just an incredible lifestyle in the 20 years. And it did force me to say, you know what, I want to step into that and constantly exploring. I mean, I've done, a lot of reading and retreats where I guess any message that I want to give to anyone is, don't ever use it as an excuse for not doing better. We all have our own story, our own journey. And now that I look back and I think, I didn't work for corporate America. I wasn't trapped in some job making minimum wage. I was able to step into, I guess what I think is just, step into a greater lifestyle for myself and my son. I mean, here in 2 days, I'm flying on another trip to visit a great friend for 5 days. And, just knowing that I kept reaching for better, but constantly being grateful for what I had, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change the fact that I didn't have everything handed to me and I had to work for it. And, because I think a lot of the friends that I see and contacts and business associates that I see that kind of grew up with the perfect scenario that we all think we want, when you take it for granted and they just, they're not happy. They're not happy inside. And I think as much as I, still know I have a lot of work to do to have that worthiness, but I'm so grateful for the life that I've had. And, I'm homeschooling my son now so that he can travel with me and so that I can, give him even a lot of the advantages that I didn't have. And I'm just grateful for that. And I don't think that I would have the same drive. And look, like you mentioned, we met through this coaching program. I don't think I ever would have been in that path if I hadn't constantly been pushed to kind of, I don't know, strive above.
Mm-hmm.
I love your tagline, right? Of, I think, so don't, anybody on this phone that you're struggling with something and you're not feeling worthy, realize that just keep focusing on what's good. Keep focusing on what's possible. Plug into podcasts like this, read the books that are suggested here, and just know that you're not alone. And if someone like me, can excel and just really have a great life, that I know a lot of people would look back on and go, oh my goodness, like I wish I was able to do that. I just talked to a friend of mine tonight and she's like, wow, you get to homeschool. That's so amazing. And you get to travel and you have freedom to make the choices that you want in your life. And I'm just, again, constantly live in gratefulness. Don't ever take it for granted. But know that whatever challenges you're experiencing or challenges that we had at our childhood only set us up to be better and look for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to look back and use it as an excuse. And I don't want to be a statistic, and I don't want to be in a box where somebody goes, oh, wow, so you're a single mom now. Like, I never want to be categorized as anything. I'm just, a person that wants, the best in life, wants to contribute, wants to give back, wants to help that next person, and wants to, help my son. And so I think, and Melissa, I think that's what you're doing by spreading the word of this, that we don't have to live in the past, and we don't have to be our story. We can create a new story any minute, any moment. We can create a new story.
It's so true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when did you start doing that self-discovery work? When did that, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, when did that
what
happen?
spurred that on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say I was so lucky now that I look back, or, blessed, or that in high school, because of my academics, I was able to be in a class. I think it was really my senior year of high school that we started reading these books, Wayne Dyer and some of the things that he's written. And it kind of opened my mind to the whole self-discovery, opportunity, I guess, that, we kind of think that we're just all pushed, and not to say victims, but that life is just happening to us instead of us creating it. And I think it wasn't until kind of that senior year, and then I was introduced to the Center for Spiritual Living, which is an international spiritual program. I guess as many people would think of it as church, but the Center for Spiritual Living, I had the chance to go to one of their services my senior year of high school, and I was like, wow, it just resonated with me, and it was very empowering. And it talked about how we can shape our own lives, that we're not being shaped, that we co-create, no matter what your beliefs are about, having that higher power in our lives, but that we co-create with that higher power. And I love that concept. It made me realize that I wasn't a victim of circumstance, that I did co-create. So whatever I can imagine in my life, and whatever dreams and goals and just I was able to help make that possible. And I think that's what gave me the courage to kind of go into the Air Force. And that led me on that path of, once I was traveling and in the Air Force, and I started reading more and just constantly searching out other people that had kind of those same beliefs. And I think the minute that you throw that out to the universe, they will conspire for us and put the right people in our path. But yeah, I think it was kind of my senior year of high school that I was enlightened to that, just that concept. And guys, really believe this, that we co-create with the higher power. It's not some God up there directing us and looking at our sins. And I know many of us feel like we made mistakes. I mean, I thought love was sex, so, being young and attractive and going into the Air Force, I just think about that. The relationships that I jumped into physically a lot quicker than I ever should have, but that was my definition of love back then, and acceptance. But I don't have to look at that as something wrong, that I was a sinner, that now I have to, recuperate from that. That was just part of my learning to accept myself, completely. But now, I'm not that person anymore. But I love the fact that we co-create. We co-create with our higher power. It's not someone, with that finger giving, saying, you're bad, and I'm gonna, put bad circumstances in your life. Not at all. We attract it for some reason. There's some lesson that we need to learn, and that's why we attract some experiences in our life. But we don't have to stay there. Take the lesson, take the gift in it, and move on. I was just, this past year, was probably in a relationship that I attracted that I would have never thought at this point in my life I would have. He had addiction that I just didn't even recognize. And it was a very turbulent, very traumatic and drama-filled relationship that I have never had in my life before. But, all he kept saying was, if you wouldn't have been that person in my life, like, you saved me, you saved my life. And so even though I attracted that drama in my life, and there's part of me that goes, oh my gosh, like, I thought I had learned better than that. I thought that but all I kept asking myself now, instead of blaming and instead of, feeling bad, I just say, what was the gift in it? So any circumstance that comes into your life that you feel like, why did I do this? And we want to beat ourselves up and we want to live in the guilt. Turn it around. Immediately say, what is the gift in this? What did I learn so that I can move into a better place in my life? And I think those are the gifts that I want to share, because those are the mindset now that instead of living in guilt and saying, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad person, right? The story that I would tell myself, for bringing this person into my life, for bringing this person into my son's life. Instead, when I have those doubtful feelings, I go, okay, no, I'm going to turn it around. What was the gift in it?
And I think that
Melissa,
helps us.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
No, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that helps us to get out of that victim mindset too.
Yeah.
And helps us to come from a more empowering place, or that place where we feel like we are creating our life, rather than it being something that's happening to us. And I think that's so important. And and going back to what you were saying about when you started on your path to self-discovery, I think this has been the case for me, and probably the case for you. Once you start learning about these things, learning about how you can make things better for yourself, and how you can kind of, you can now be in charge of your future rather than just kind of, letting things happen to you.
Exactly.
It becomes kind of addictive, I think, and you want to just continue to work on that stuff and continue to grow. And sometimes, it's uncomfortable, it's painful to go through it. But if we do that work, we can get ourselves to such a much better place where we feel more fulfilled and more happy with our lives.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And something that just came up that I realized I hadn't mentioned, but I think it's control. We all feel like we want to have control. And I think I spent many years trying to control everything. And that's where my worry came from, because I think as a child, I recognized very early, even if I didn't know it consciously, subconsciously feeling so out of control, not knowing where I was sleeping, not knowing who my parental, guidance was going to be the next day, like having these, influential, adults in my life just stripped away. So I realized that, looking back, feeling out of control, and many of us have probably felt like that with whatever abuse that we had to go through.
Absolutely.
Gosh, you go, man, I just want control. Well, control is an illusion. And the minute that we recognize the only thing we can control is ourselves, the only thing in the universe, in the world, and all the planet, the only thing we have control over is our own reactions and our own responses. We can't control what people do or say. We can't control whatever journey that they are on that led them to do whatever they did. But we can control our own mind and to change it. That the minute that some negative self-talk comes in, we have control to change the story for ourselves. And I think that the minute, and again, it's still a work in progress, but the minute that we can recognize it and go, oh my gosh, you're in worry right now because you're feeling like you can't control the situation. Well, guess what? You can't. You can't. There's no controlling the traffic. There's no controlling, whether that person's going to call or not call in business or in our personal lives. We can't control that. But we can completely control who we are and what we do on a daily basis to make ourselves healthier, to not be the victim, and to feel like that, we are empowered. Mm-hmm. But I think that, if anything I would want to leave with everybody is just know, change is inevitable. Change is going to happen. Controlling anything outside of ourselves is really impossible. But if we can just get better at accepting ourselves and controlling our reactions to the outside world, we're going to be a lot happier and be a lot more peaceful, on a daily basis, for sure.
Controlling our reaction to the outside world. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's what we can do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I read a quote the other day, and this is what it said, and this really just kind of stuck with me. It said, our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it.
Oh,
how true is that?
Wow. Yeah.
Mm.
And something recently along those lines that now I've been using kind of as a mantra is it says, if you're living in regret, you're living in the past. If you're living in worry, you're living in the future. If you're living in peace, you're living in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as possible to just be in the present moment. I mean, we miss out on so much of our life because we're either in the past or in the future and we're not right now. You know, whether it's a conversation with somebody or an experience with our children or an experience with our significant other, you know, we're just not completely present. And if we can just constantly remind ourselves, you know, it's going to happen. But if we can just, you know, be in that conscious awareness to remind ourselves, oh, okay, I'm not here right now. You know, like even when I'm with my son, you know, and those kind of things, it's like, oh, let's give it undivided attention to where we are right now. Because the more that we can live in the present moment, the more peace we're going to have in our lives and the more happiness. And I think at the end of the day, no matter how much money we have or whatever we have in our lives, I think everybody's goal is to just be happy. And we're entitled to be happy because, you know, we spread that joy to everybody. But if we're living in misery and depression and constantly being the victim and living in the past, we're not going to share our light with the world. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really what I believe. And so don't feel bad about being happy. Like that's Deepak Chopra is one of my, you know, teachers. And he says, I mean, the meaning of life is happiness. But some of us feel like, you know, suffering is what it's supposed to be. But no, you know, being happy with ourselves and with our career and really living our passion is what's going to bring, you know, more to this world than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not selfish to do that.
Yeah.
At
I
all.
think sometimes, yeah, people might think it feels selfish to be happy.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not.
It's not.
No.
No, not at all.
So, Kelley, I know that you're doing well today. Are there, you know, things that you're still struggling with, though, as a result of what you went through growing up?
Well, and I guess I mentioned it a little bit, but even in the moments when now, like you said, in my career, I mean, you know, made a successful living, you know, six figures from home for the last 20 years. And I get to speak and train in my company. There's still moments that when I need to get up and talk about my story, you know, I still fight with the not feeling worthy and needing to talk myself out of that and keep reminding myself of my success story now. And I guess the gift in that is it keeps me very humble. You know, I never want to feel like, you know, what I did was anything special. I constantly want my message to be inspiring for other people to say, you know, they can do it too. And I think that that's why, you know, you and I have talked about our journeys in this coaching program, that I finally broke through enough of my not good enough stories in my head to realize that I do have a story to share. And I do want to help coach and be there for other people that are right on that verge of feeling like they're not good enough and kind of coach them through the process of having, you know, everything that they want, having their dreams fulfilled. But yeah, it is amazing, guys. Don't feel like you're alone. That it is a constant struggle every day, filling your mind with the good stuff. You know, I still and Melissa, I got to tell you, I know it's becoming more and more acceptable, but I have a meditation practice every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm realizing that the calming, the stillness, doing yoga, doing the meditation, you know, surrounding myself by like-minded people, that is constantly what we need to do. And my meditation practice has helped me so much of just slowing down, you know, taking even that 5-10 minutes in the morning of just, you know, reminding myself of, you know, of the higher power and that we're not alone, whatever your higher power looks like to you, and that we are magnificent. Don't let anybody tell you that we're sinners or that there's something wrong with us that we need to fix. No. I saw my child born. Little babies are pure light and pure innocence and pure goodness. And it's just the world that can contaminate that. So there's nothing ever wrong with us. It's just like on a constant daily basis, we need to remind ourselves. So, and I think it gets easier and easier, when you surround yourself by amazing people and by tools like this, what you're doing, Melissa, and the messages and the stories that you're reminding everybody that we've all come from some kind of, what society might say imperfection. But we all can rise above it and find that happiness and that true success.
Yeah, absolutely. Great message.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kelley, tell us what it is that you do today.
Yeah, so I'm with a company. It's Legal Shield. It's legal and identity theft protection. It's for families and business owners. A big area of the company that I've actually specialized in is the employee benefits. So it's really rewarding that I get to kind of go into companies, very similar to other voluntary benefits where, we've all seen the duck with Aflac and stuff like that. So, another voluntary benefit. So it's really great. And of course I was scared to death at first to go and speak in front of groups of people and to go speak to business owners and HR professionals. But now that's what I've done. And it's really built a great life for me that I've been able to work this business from home. I built a residual business. So in the insurance world, if anybody doesn't realize, in the insurance world, when you sell a plan and that person keeps your plan year after year after year, kind of like our auto insurance guy, we keep getting paid. And so business that I wrote 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm still getting paid for that. And so it's really helped create the time freedom that I have now and the travel, time that I have with my son. And so, yeah, it's a great company, Legal Shield. They've been around for 45 years and we're all independent agents, but within that, we have the ability to create our business any way we want to. So I kind of think of it as like we're little franchises where I have my own insurance agency. And so it's been really great.
Well, very cool. And I'm glad that, it's worked out for you and allowed you to have the freedom that you like to have and to be able to spend that time with your son. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you the final question that I have for you today. And that is...
Great.
Yeah, that is, given what you know now, if you could go back to when you were going through your tough times and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I know, right? That's such an interesting question. I think the best advice I would have given myself is just constantly look at the good. Even in the midst of some of the bad things, you could always focus on what's right, what's good instead of what's bad. So, again, like how I mentioned in the last part of just focusing on the gift in it all. And so I think the advice, I know it's easy to tell myself back then, oh, you're going to be fine, you're going to be great. But I think I would have just wanted to constantly remind myself, focus on the good because it's there if you try to find it. If you constantly are focusing on the bad, you're going to find it. But just shift your perception, focus on the good, and it will help, keep that positive spirit, keep that positive outcome so that you just continue, one day at a time and keep focusing on the positive. And by the end, it's just going to be an incredible, amazing life if you keep focusing on the good.
Love it. Yeah. Because, what we focus on is what we get.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly, Melissa. Yeah. Yes, we do. And I think some of us forget that. So don't forget, you get to choose what you focus on. So focus on the good.
Yeah. So, Kelley, is there a way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the easiest way is maybe if I give my email address or something, that would be awesome.
All right.
I mean, I do have my own Legal Shield website, but my email address is very easy. It's just Kelley, Kelley. I always say my extra E in my Kelley gives me my balance. The number 4, legal, legal, at AOL.com. Kelley, the number 4, legal, for Legal Shield, at AOL.com. And I would love, yes, please reach out to me for any questions, comments, advice, business advice, anything that I can help you with. That's my mission now, right? To give back as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. So just wanted to have a way for people to connect if they, just want to thank you for being on here today, or just, feel compelled to reach out for some reason. So that's great. Well,
and Melissa, I couldn't thank you enough for just having the courage and the motivation to just, put a platform like this together. I think you probably don't even realize the ripple effect of what you're doing and the lives that you're helping and saving. And so I just want to say thank you, really to you for having me on, but for just making this whole thing possible.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, and I think, we had a great conversation here today, and hopefully it's been able to help someone who's listening and to inspire them and to give them hope that, things can definitely get better. So thank you for coming on and sharing your message with us.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Okay, Melissa, you too.
Thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 123. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/Kelley R to find the links mentioned during this episode or to leave a comment. And don't forget that's Kelley with 2 E's. So I do hope that you found this episode to be inspiring and a good one to kick off the new year. I love Kelley's message of creating a new story for ourselves in spite of what we've been through. We don't have to be a victim of our circumstances. We have the power to choose what's next for us. As Kelley was saying, we can't control external circumstances, but we can control what we do with what happens. And we can use our circumstances to create something better. I personally had some less than desirable circumstances happen to me last year, and I played the victim at times, and I know that wasn't good for me to do. It allowed those things to have more power over me than they should have, and they kept me stuck. So I'm focusing now on the things I can control so that I can move forward, and I encourage you to do the same. Believe me, it's much better that way. And as a reminder, I am offering the free 60-minute vision strategy sessions for this month only, if you'd like to get clear on what you'd like to achieve this year so that you can start creating your story for your life. Email me, melissa@thegrassgetsgreener.com, or use the contact form on the website. I would love to hear from you and get that set up. And come back in 2 weeks for the next episode. It's actually going to be a different type of episode. So I'm bringing a sponsor on for the show. It's this great free anonymous writing platform called Navni, and I think it's something that many of you would find interesting. So I'm going to be joined by one of the co-founders, Jack Roscoe, and he's going to tell you all about the platform and also share a little bit of his story and what led him to co-creating this type of site. So I hope you'll check that one out. Also, head over to the website to grab your free copy of the Top 10 Strategies Guide for Survivors. In it, you'll find the top 10 most common strategies my podcast guests have used for overcoming the effects of past trauma. It's a great place to get started if you're looking for some strategies that can help you in your healing, as they have helped my guests. And you can find that at thegrassgetsgreener.com/guide, or also on the show notes page. So be sure to grab that if you haven't yet. And lastly, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And, as always, have hope.